Kia ora, good morning. So I just woke up. I'm still half asleep. I've just made myself a coffee and I need to document this dream because it was wild, but it led to something really cool at the end. So I'm still waking up properly. I had a dream that um, this friend who I don't know in real life, but she kind of reminded me of the girl from next door, but I think she's just moved out, thank God. She kind of looked like that. Um, they were trying to section her partner for being an alcoholic. And she was nervous about agreeing to the sectioning, and I was saying to her, look, you know my story. I said, you know that my ex got me locked up when he tried to kill me and I called him out, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, yeah. And I said, what I can tell you is when I was locked up, I said, I was in with a lot of women who had addiction issues like drugs and alcohol and all of that. And I said, all that's pretty much is going to happen is that he's going to be kept in his room. And I said, they'll medicate him. And I said, he'll be bored out of his skull. I said, because there's nothing to do. I said, but one thing I can tell you is that like 90% of the nurses that are in there are really lovely. And like he's not going to be in any danger. He's not under any threat. Like he'll be fine. I said, it's not going to be like it was with me because he's British. I mean, it wasn't funny what happened to me, but I was, I was treated the way I was because I wasn't British, because I was Indigenous, because they didn't understand my culture. They didn't even try. But she was nervous to agree to have him put in there, and it wasn't even the same hospital. It was like a completely different hospital with like it was like open beds. It wasn't like where I was, where you got your own separate bedroom. And I said to her, look, I'll show you. And so I took her into the hospital and I was showing her around and I was talking to some of the nurses there that remembered me, but in real life they weren't the same nurses. And I was sitting at the table smoking weed, rolling joints and smoking weed with some of the nurses, and I was helping the nurses out because there were people turning up with things for patients where they didn't know where to put them and all of that. So I was helping them because I knew how it went, you see. And the nurses were like, what would we do without you here, blah blah blah. And I was trying to show the girlfriend that her boyfriend would be completely taken care of and that it was a chill place. I mean, it was as boring as hell, but I kept myself isolated from everyone, and it was hell for me. But I was trying to show her that because she was British, she'd be completely fine. And that the nurses, I said 90% of the nurses are really lovely people, and he can go to them for anything that he needs and and all of that. And I'm sitting there, rolling this joint, smoking this joint, and then next thing I know, I'm in a car driving around London, and I'm watching. We're watching this woman's boyfriend, who again I don't know in real life. I don't know these people from Adam. It's just she kind of reminded me of the neighbour that's just moved out, and I know they've just moved out because yesterday these bin men went inside her house with all the bins and were clearing out like her curtains and stuff. So God knows what's happened. I don't care. She's gone. Praise the Lord. And we were driving around the streets and we watched him. It's like she was spying on him, checking up on him, making sure he was okay. And we saw him come out of his hotel, and he met this man across the street, and then they put on these Sherlock Holmes costumes, and this guy had a folder, and I said to the driver of the car, "What are they doing?" And he goes, "Oh, they're on a Sherlock Holmes tour." And I was thinking, "Oh my God, that's so cool. I want to go on a Sherlock Holmes tour as well. Like, that's so cool." So this guy, I think he was like taking them around, showing them Sherlock Holmesy things connected to Sherlock Holmes, but they were also solving a murder, which was just like so cool to me. And I had actually thought about doing murder mystery nights, and remember when the band plays is a murder mystery, like, so yeah. So anyway, next thing I know, I'm sitting at this table smoking a joint with Madonna, and and I'm looking at these little boxes of puzzles that you could buy. It's like we were in a toy shop or something, and I was looking at these little boxes where they were, like £3, and they were just like puzzles that you could do for kids that were like brain teasers, but games as well. And I thought, they were really cool. And they made up little pictures, and I've never seen anything like it in real life. But I know they were £2.99, and I just thought they were really cool. And out the corner of my eye, I could see her stealing the weed. But the weed that was on the table was prescription weed, and it belongs to the people, but we were smoking it because it came from the hospital. And then I remember thinking, don't say anything, because she doesn't know that if you're not a patient, they're going to check your bags and she'll get caught. Really weird, right? So anyway, then I woke up. So then I was putting the whole dream together, and I just, I don't really want to go into interpreting it. Hang on, let me have a sip of my coffee. But basically, I was being told that I needed to put the puzzles together in order to come up with the answer, and that someone has stolen something that they don't realise. When you dream of famous people, it means having an interaction with someone who is well known and or famous, having some kind of interaction, putting the puzzle pieces together, becoming a detective, and putting the puzzle pieces together where you have to play a role in order to put the puzzle pieces together to reach a higher perspective, which is what the weed was. Whenever you dream of marijuana in a dream, it means reaching a higher perspective, seeing everything from a higher vantage point, because when you smoke cannabis, it releases DMT, and that's called the God chemical. And a lot of people, when they have that DMT high, they reach a higher state of being where they connect with God, where they connect with the universe, where they connect with the atomic frequency or the creation frequency, which is why a lot of musicians and artists and that smoke it, because when they smoke it, they become incredibly inspired, and it also heals your body. And it's been proven to have incredible cognitive effects on people over the age of 45. It helps like their memory, and it gets them creative and thinking. And she was stealing it. Madonna was stealing it. Not saying she was the real one, but obviously it's a dream. And she was stealing it. So stealing people's creativity, stealing people's ideas. If I get cut off, you're going to know who and why. stealing other people's place, usurping, you could look at it that way, trying to usurp, because she was trying to inject herself into what everybody else was doing while still being the outsider, but not wanting it to be known that she was trying to be a part of it, pretending to have that same connection while not wanting it to be known. And I was asking people questions about, what's London like? Is there a lot to do in London? Asking a lot of questions about London while we were driving around, because I was thinking, maybe I wouldn't mind to go to London and, have a look around and do some touristy things. And when you have a dream about hospitals, it means needing to take a deep look at what needs healing, except I wasn't the one there. It wasn't me there. I was helping this woman show her that it's where her man needed to be for alcohol, because he was an alcoholic. And he'd obviously done something, because, it's kind of like, I knew that it's where it was headed for him. So I was trying to numb the pain, which is why it was alcohol. Why his addiction was alcohol. So I'm trying to talk someone into, I'm wondering if it's the king, to be honest. The dream is saying that I'm trying to talk someone, I'm trying to ease someone into something that's inevitable to happen, but I'm assuring him that everything's going to be okay. The fact that I was getting on with the nurses and I was kind of trying to ease him into it, ease him into accepting the inevitable by showing him a higher perspective. Even though it was a shitty, horrible, torturous experience for me, it won't be the same for him. Because he's British. But this is the cool part. So I'm just having a sip of my coffee. After I woke up, I thought, what the hell was that all about? Secret meetings, dressing up, solving mysteries as Sherlock Holmes. And then I thought, time-jumping detective, clearly, because of Fraser, the teleporter, and Fraser and George, and then I was making my coffee and I thought, I'm being told to put the puzzle pieces together. I'm being told to take a higher perspective, to take a higher look. In order to help him, I need to take a higher perspective, do some detective work, or because I've done detective work, the one who was stealing from me is going to get caught. Excuse me, I'm just blowing my nose. The one, how do I, because I know, if I get cut off, just give me a second, I'll be right back, but it'll be 100% concrete proof that I'm right. So a famous person was stealing someone's high perspective, trying to inject themselves into the situation without being known. Right? So that's what the whole Madonna stealing weed thing was. And the fact that I was driving around London in that and then looking at the puzzle, being told, search and look around to figure out the puzzle, like I'm missing something to the puzzle, and being excited about it, because putting the pieces together in this little box of puzzles, you had to put all the pieces together to build a bigger picture, which again is also what weed means in dreams. When you smoke weed and you have that dimethyltryptamine release, you see things from a higher perspective. Using past experiences from when I was locked up to ease someone into a situation to prepare them for what is coming, by saying to them, like, this is going to be okay, like it's going to be fine. It's not going to be dramatic like you think it is. It's not going to be as horrible as you think it is. It's actually going to be quite a smooth transition, because I was in the dream, I was saying, like, it's boring. He's gonna be bored out of his brain. There's nothing to do, which means he might be expecting all this drama and palaver and kick up, things kicking off and all of that, but it's not going to go that way at all. It's actually going to be quite a smooth transition where, like, pretty much nothing happens. His worst fears won't be realised. And I was helping this lady take bags of medication to the nurses, so offering solutions. Um, Offering solutions, but to answer toxic situations, because it was all like pharmaceutical medications, which don't help the body at all. But I was helping take them to the nurses, so I was offering solutions to a toxic situation, basically. So then I woke up and I checked everything, and I saw someone had been looking at my Benefits Britain videos. If I was Prime Minister, this is what I'd do. And I'm thinking, why someone watched my Benefits Britain video? Because that was just me mucking about, saying to the king. What was that? If I was Prime Minister, this is what I'd do. These are the changes I'd make that would benefit Britain. So there was just a noise outside. It sounded like maybe Foxy. Oh, I hope Foxy's okay. So, making my coffee, and I started thinking about the dream and thinking that I'm being told that I need to change something. And I don't know why. Looking from a higher perspective, I don't know why I got onto this subject, but I started thinking about how proud I was that I was back at that horrible place and I wasn't afraid. Like I'd conquered my fear of being there, because I knew I had been found innocent. I knew. Sorry, front doors. God, I don't like living here. I don't feel safe here anymore. Who the hell's walking in and out at 5 o'clock in the morning? Sounded like. Was that the fox? I don't know. Anyway. Um, so I've lost my train of thought. Oh. Um, Yeah, being in the hospital, and I was proud of myself because I wasn't scared anymore because I knew I'd been found innocent. I knew that the reason why I had been put there, it had been rectified. So I had nothing to be afraid of, but I knew that this man had no choice but to be there, that it was going to be inevitable. So I was trying to ease him into it and say, look, it's not going to be as bad as what you think. It's actually going to go a lot smoother than you realise. You can just sit back and relax. It's all been taken care of from a higher place. And I started thinking about how when I wrote, and then they were gone when I was locked up, and with a little help from my friends, which is a book about conservation, raising awareness for animal and nature conservation, but also fighting for Indigenous rights. Because the main character, Lewis, is an Indigenous boy, and he's based on two First Nations and one Polynesian Indigenous males who had come to me or that I'd witnessed being victims of racial abuse because they were Indigenous, and how it led to addictions and attempting to take their own lives, and that sort of thing, and coming to me for help, or me witnessing it and helping them, or watching how they help themselves. I used the three boys, I put them all together, the puzzle pieces. Remember in the dream, I put the puzzle pieces together. I kind of conglomerated the three men that I knew and turned them into one character. And he's the protagonist for With a Little Help from My Friends, because the trees and the animals and the Earth Kingdom ask him to help him go to the Arboreal Council to protect the grandmother tree from the impending invasion from Jeb the Goblin King and the Shadowlands, which he does, like it's a whole thing. Gabriel and I spent a lot of time coming up with the animals, and I had even asked one of the nurses, Liam, he was the one that named Eric, Eric the Eagle. I said, I need a name for an RAF Eagle, an Air Force Eagle, and he said Eric, so that's why my eagle's called Eric. Thomas and Gabriel came up with Juan the Blue Jay, who's like Eric's doppelganger. Eric's an American eagle, and Juan is a North American blue jay who copies his idol. Everything Eric does, Juan does. Thomas came up with Juan because blue jays are one of his favourite birds. But we came up with the idea of him being like chonky and having the same aviator sunglasses and like leather jacket, bomber jacket and all that, copying Eric to a T. Because this story, even though it's serious and it's about kingdoms having to defend themselves from the Goblin King and the Shadowlands, there's a lot of comedy in it. So one of the cleaners' staff came up with Betty. She's one of the mother trees, one of the grandmother trees. Well, not the grandmother tree, she's one of the tree elders. And the other one, because they were the ones that were saving fruit for me at the end of the day and bringing it into my room because they knew I wasn't being fed, and they were fighting with the hospital as to why I wasn't being fed. So I got them to name characters. The other one, Jo, she named the mama bear. I let her name the mama bear. But this is what I was thinking, because obviously the dream. When I was sitting around the table smoking the weed with the patients in there, I was talking to them and telling them, God, you know, when I was in here, I used to write these stories, blah, blah, blah. So when I was making my coffee, I was thinking about it, putting all the puzzle pieces together, boom, 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 boom. What am I being told? And then it hit me. What I'm being told, I have to put something together, that I'm missing something and I have to put it all together. So I started thinking about the Arabian Nitrous, and I figured out the storyline to it. And it goes like this. The Arabian princess is going to beg her father, the Sultan, to do the training so that she can become a Persian warrior. He's going to make it really hard for her. If you want this, because this isn't what princesses do, you're going to have to prove that you've earned it. So she does. And for his own amusement, he makes the training hard for her. But by making the training hard for her, when the invaders come, she's not only well prepared for it, she's more prepared because she's stronger, she's faster, she's quicker on her feet. Being a princess as well, you know, she's trained how to be diplomatic. She's been taught all of this from all sides, so she knows what to do. So when it comes time to, like they've blocked off, she doesn't have access to her kingdom. She's been blocked off from it. So the only way that she can get in to save her family, who have been blocked off from her and her warriors, and that from gaining access to, you know, protect and defend them all while they're out training, they come back and find out that that the bad guy has taken over the kingdom. Her family are trapped inside, and she needs to be able to get in. And they're like, you know, it's hopeless. We don't know what to do. And she's like, well, we can scale the wall. And they're saying it's impossible. You know, nobody's been able to scale these walls for 1,000 years, blah, blah, blah. This is why the kingdom was built so high with that wall and all of that, you know, going back to Lucian's dragon. When Lucian gets to the grounds of the Shadowlands, where Jeb's castle is on the other side, the walls are so high because it's supposed to be impenetrable. You can't climb it, you know, like Edinburgh Castle and all that. Because a lot of castles are built on high ground, so that it was hard for the invaders to get in. Because I live in Britain, so, you know, I know this stuff. I've been to a lot of castles. And so she's like, because of her training, I'll climb it. If you're too chicken, if you're not going to do this, if you're not going to protect my family and my village in there, I'll do it. I'll climb the wall. And they're laughing, oh, you're never going to be able to do it. And so she finds a way to get up the wall, and they're like, whoa. She's the first one to scale the wall. She's the first one. She does it. A woman does it, scales the wall. And single-handedly, you know, like fights and opens the gates and lets all the warriors in, and there's this big battle. And while she's there, she finds out some stuff that turns out that the reason why her family are at war with this other kingdom is because another kingdom, a lower kingdom, who wanted to take over the other two kingdoms, had started a war between the two. Do you see where I'm going? Someone from a lower kingdom had lied to the first kingdom to start war with the second kingdom that she was defending. So then she uses her diplomatic abilities as a royal to go to the first kingdom and say, even at risk to her own life, do you see where I'm going with this? This is literally the story of the Arabian Nitrous. I just hadn't said anything. So then she uses her ability to appeal to, because she's a royal, and you're taught diplomacy and all of that. My father taught me diplomacy. My father taught me all this sort of stuff because he was a grunt as well in the army, and he always had to talk sense into, like, the generals and the majors and the colonels and the all of that. It's one of the reasons why he kept refusing to be promoted, because he said, I was born a grunt, I'll die a grunt. He thought that the officers, even though he used to drink in the officers' mess, they were idiots, because he said it was all about egos and medals and not about the boots that they were wanting to put on the ground. And this was at the time of the Falklands War and all that. So there must have been, at some point, the British might have been asking New Zealand and Australia and that to get involved in the Falklands. I don't know. I just know these men turned up. There was a map on the table. They weren't all army guys, and they were talking to my dad, and we were forbidden from going into that room. And I've been trying to figure out my whole life why these men turned up at my house to talk to my dad, and we were forbidden from going anywhere near that room. But when I sneaky peeked, all I saw was a map of Argentina with phone lines and power lines. That's all I remember. And thinking, what the hell? And then when my dad died, even though they said, oh no, it was just air quotes coincidence, even though he'd been out of the army for 7 years, they lowered the flag. He got the gun salute, and the RAF at Ohakea Air Base did a 3-plane formation right over his coffin. The Air Force. Why were the Air Force honouring my father in the army? The man who passed the SAS training twice but never joined the SAS, because we're pretty sure it's because Mum wouldn't let him. So anyway, my dad taught me some things. He taught me about kindness and humanity and doing the right thing by the innocent people, especially when he was in the Solomon Islands. He helped calm a civil war down to the point where they gave my father, honoured him with war masks and a hammerhead shark. They took my dad down to the beach. They said, thank you, you're wonderful, this, that and the other. And they presented him, they dragged this hammerhead shark out of the water to present it to my dad. They were going to chop its head off and everything. And my dad said, put it back, and ran away. Like, he was like, Jesus, like, what the hell am I going to do with a hammerhead shark? I think they were going to, like, offer its head or something to him. But he said, put it back, and ran away. And they all laughed, but apparently they did put it back. My dad taught me a lot. And so I had written all of this into the Arabian Nitrous, but of course back then I was calling it the Brave Sue Nitrous. But then she goes to the First Kingdom at risk to herself, knowing she could be killed at any moment, because they were going to see her as being the enemy, because there was a war going on. And she goes to the king and she appeals to the king, and she says, my father's not the bad guy. This is what happened. Here's the proof. Here's the evidence. Remember in the dream, Sherlock Holmes? Here's the evidence. They're not, our kingdom isn't that, we're not the bad guys. It's this lower kingdom. This lower kingdom is the one that is trying to start the wars between the two so that they can take over both. Sound familiar? Because that's what I'd written into the Brave Sue Nitrous. Do you see where I'm going with all of this? And then the king realises she's telling the truth and brings his court in to say, why didn't you investigate any of this? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, because, bloodthirsty. That's what my dad used to say. All the officers, all they want is war. They want to cause trouble so that they can prove themselves, so that they can get their shiny medals. And that's why I'll never be an officer. He was warrant officer second class. He said that's the highest he'd go. No more after that. Because anything after that took him away from his boys, and he considered himself a leader, which is why when my dad died, we had like 4 army buses turn up of young men that my father did not know, new recruits and all that, that my dad didn't know, who were there just to honour the man, the legend, Sergeant Major George Edward Patrick Callaghan, my daddy. So his funeral was bittersweet because I lost my dad. He died in my arms. He called me home. He actually rang me up on the phone. And he said to me, I'm just seeing how you're doing. And I said, I'm fine. And he goes, I've just been to the doctor. And he goes, oh, they gave me something called amitriptyline to help me sleep because I can't sleep. And he said, your mum said that you take that. And I said, yeah. I said, it's a muscle relaxant. I said, because I get spasms because of, my trapped nerves in my back because I was born with a degenerative spinal disease. So remember the medication and the dream, the bag of medication. But anyway, and he said, what's it going to do to me? And I said, nothing. I said, you're just going to get tired. I said, you'll go to sleep. I said, when you wake up, you'll have a dry mouth. That's it. I said, you'll feel a little bit like you're hungover. I said, but you'll have a dry mouth. And he goes, oh, okay. And then he goes, when are you coming home? And I said to him, I don't know, I was thinking of coming home in a couple of weeks. I said, why? And he goes, oh, he said, I thought maybe you might come home this weekend. And I said to him, do you want me to come home? And he goes, oh, well, if you want. He goes, if you want to come home. My dad's never, ever called me on the phone once, ever. And he's never asked me to come home. And I knew something was up. I knew he was scared. And I knew something was up. I was 25. And so I rang my husband, Paul, and he was at work, and I said to him, look, I just got a call from Dad, and I said, I can't explain it, babe, but I said, there's something wrong with Dad, and I said, I think we need to go home. I said, he's been to the doctor, they did an ECG on his heart, they said everything's fine, blah, blah, blah. I said, but he's rung me and I can tell he's scared and he wants me to come home, and I don't know why. And thankfully, Paul said, okay, I'll book the afternoon off, because this luckily was a Friday. He said, pack us some clothes and I'll be there. I'll be there in like half an hour. So he came, picked me up. We drove the 2 and a bit hours from Wellington, Upper Hutt, to Palmerston North. And he was in bed. And he wouldn't let my mum leave his side. So I said to Mum, every time she was coming out of the room to have a cigarette and that, he'd call her back, Pooh, when you're coming back? You coming back to bed? So I said to Mum, look, don't worry about it, because she had, Mum and Dad had my sister Laurie that died, her 2 kids, Sean and Emma, and Sean was about 15 at this point, and Emma was about 6 or 7, was she? I thought she was younger than that. Was she about 6? I thought she was younger than that. I can't remember. It was very traumatic for me. So, but I said to Mum, look, don't worry about it. I'll sort the kids out. You just be with Dad. Everything's fine. So, I got dinner ready, sorted the kids out, blah, blah, blah. And then when it was night time, I said to Mum and Paul, I'm not going to go to sleep tonight. I'm going to stay away all night. And if everything's okay by morning, I'll sleep in the morning. But I said, I'll do the night shift. Because in my culture, we have aroha. And aroha is when, well, not aroha, sorry, koha. God, that's how long it's been since I've been connected to my Māori roots. And koha is when you do acts of love for people, acts of aroha, which is why I said aroha, where everyone comes together to help the main people involved when it comes to grief and illness and hospice care and all that sort of thing. And I don't know why, I just was trusting my instincts. So I said to Mum, I'll take the night shift. And because when someone dies, when you have a tangi, or when someone's dying, and you pull your koha together, you have people taking the night shifts and you have people taking the day shifts. And so I said, I'll take the night shift. And Mum and Paul were like, okay, that's fine. So there was just me, my husband at the time, Mum, Dad, Sean and Emma in the house. 2 kids, a Pākehā boy who was so bloody white, like as white as the driven snow kind of Pākehā, like no connection to Māoridom at all. But he absolutely adored my parents and they adored him, me and my parents. And this was about 9 o'clock. Mum came out and she said to me, he's speaking Arabic. She was getting scared and I said, what do you mean he's speaking Arabic? And she said, he started pointing at something in the corner and he's speaking Arabic. So I went into the room and I sat next to him and I held his hand. I was like, you're right, Dad? And he goes, yeah. He goes, you good? And I said, yeah. And he goes, well, he started going to sleep because he was on the medication and then he did it. He was pointing his finger in the corner and he was speaking Arabic, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. And I said to him, what are you saying, Dad? What are you saying? And he goes, Mum. He goes, it's Mum. Mum's in the corner. His mum, my Arab nana, Sitdi. She was in the corner. And I thought, oh, crap. But I didn't say anything to my mum. And he goes, where's your mum? Tell her to come back to bed. And so I went and got her and I said, he's calling for you. So she got into bed with him and I found out later on, he put his arms around her and he said, just hold me. So she did. And he said to her, you've always been the love of my life. He said, from the minute I met you, I knew I was going to spend the rest of my life with you. And I'm sorry for everything I've ever done. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it, Georgie. Don't worry about it. And he goes, Pooh, I love you. And I always have and I always will. And then he went to sleep. And she came out, she was having a cigarette. And I said to her, I think maybe take the cigarettes into your room, because she wouldn't smoke in the bedroom. She goes, no. She said, because he's having trouble breathing. She said, I've got all the windows open. He made her take these certain plants that she had in the house out of the house, because he said it was the reason why he was having trouble breathing. And so it was about 10 o'clock at night or something. I heard this. I was in bed reading. Mum had gone back to bed with Dad and I heard this almighty crash and then just Mum screaming out my name, Debbie! And all I remember was 25 years old, I jumped from the bed to their door, which was separated by a long hallway, and it was like, boom, I was there. And Dad was flat on his back and she was screaming. She was, she said, I was like, what the hell's happened, blah, blah, blah. She said, he just collapsed. She said he sat up, he was having trouble breathing, he was holding his chest, and then he fell back and hit his head, and I could see he had like this red mark on his head. And So I ran and I grabbed the phone and I called for an ambulance, and I was still talking to them on the phone when I ran around to my dad's side and I had to do CPR on my dad, and I couldn't get his false teeth out because they'd fallen. His dentures had fallen, and I remember Mum using her finger to hook his dentures out so that I could do CPR, breathing into my dad and pumping his chest, breathing into my dad, pumping his chest, checking a pulse. And then my mum was standing paralysed at the door, just like when I had to do CPR on my sister when I was 18. And then Sean turned up at there and he's like, "What the hell's going on?" He saw me working on Dad, and I said to Mum, "Get him out of here." So Mum, it kind of like snapped her out of it. She shut the door while I was working on Dad, and then the paramedics turned up. I remember when they walked in, they said, "It's all right, we'll take over from here." And I said, "Not until you get round to this side of the bed." So yeah, he got taken to hospital. Obviously, he was on life support, and he didn't survive, and all hell broke loose. But it was during his tangi at his funeral and that I found out just how much respect my dad had by the people that came out to honour him with koha, with aroha, with with kindness and with love, just out of respect for my dad's reputation. And my dad taught me a lot. He's the reason why yeah, every Christmas, if there were any strays or waifs in the army that had nowhere to go, they were invited to our house for Christmas, because he couldn't bear the thought of anyone being by themselves at Christmas time, because my dad never got Christmas as a kid. He every year he used to write to Santa and he'd never get anything because his mother was Muslim, but his brother, who was like the man of the house, thought it was funny to torture him like that. And then apparently one year, my auntie Marion or my auntie Rosina put his put a pencil and like some fruit and stuff in his stocking, and he just thought it was the greatest thing ever. He was so excited. He got Santa for the first time when he was like 8. And so what had happened was the Christmas before he died, because he died on the 10th of January, 1998. The Christmas before, I had started writing letters to the kids, pretend like, I was, the kids would be writing letters to Santa, and I thought it would be really cool to be Santa and write back to them. For years, nobody could figure out who the Santa was. The signature was always exactly the same. And I thought this year it would be good to write to Dad and say, "Dear George, I'm sorry it's taken so long to write, but you know how it is being Santa, blah, blah, blah." I was talking to him about how he'd been a good boy serving his queen and his country and, all this sort of stuff. And I had said to him that Elvis is up here because my dad loved Elvis, and they used to think my dad was Elvis. When my mum turned up after she met Dad and she was bringing Dad home to meet the family, my aunties saw him out the car window and said, "Oh my God, Elma's dating Elvis," because my dad looked like Elvis. He was rich, he was suave, he was this, that, and the other, and he was gorgeous, and all the women wanted him. But Mum got him, and they said Elma's dating Elvis. So in the letter I was saying, Elvis is here. We originally had him on in the bakery, but we had to put him in the wrapping department because he was eating all the Christmas mince pies. And I was saying, I've got Laurie here. She helps with the naughty and nice list and, all this sort of thing. And I was saying to him, come Christmas Day, I'm to make up for all the times you asked for me when I couldn't be there, because obviously with his mum being Muslim, she wasn't going to let him have Christmas. But she raised her kids Catholic, and it was my Uncle Graham who was like the man of the house. Once she got divorced and all of that. But when his twin, my uncle Sonny, was murdered, he went a bit nuts. There was quite a big age gap. And yeah, he took it all out on my dad, unfortunately, and he thought it would be funny to torture my dad at Christmas time by getting my dad's hopes up and then seeing his hopes be crushed Christmas morning and not having anything there. So in this letter, Santa was saying, I'm going to make it up for you, make it up to you. I'm going to leave a surprise for you on Christmas Day. And then because we all had Christmas out at my sister's place, it was really weird because we have this rule in my family that no one gets up to, even now to this day, if I was to go home for Christmas, this rule would apply because that's the position I hold in the family. It was a rule that was made my very first Christmas. I was born in November 97. So this was December 1997. This rule was made and everybody follows it. It's why my nieces and nephews, one of the reasons my nieces and nephews love me so much. Nobody gets up to open up the presents until the baby of the family's awake. And I'm the baby of the family. I'm literally introduced as the baby of the family. Even at my age, and I'm like 6 foot, I'm like, I tower over my brothers and sisters. Nobody opens the presents until Debbie's awake. So, of course, I always use that to my advantage. And if I wake up at 3 and want to open the presents, everybody else has to as well, even if they're still drunk and hungover, even if they're still fleeing drunk. If I get up to open the presents, everyone has to get up and open the presents. So all my nieces and nephews would sleep in my room because then they got to open their presents at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But this Christmas, my dad's last Christmas, I got up to go to the bathroom and I saw the kitchen light on. And I went into my sister's kitchen and my dad was sitting on a chair just looking out the window, and she lived out in the country. So he was looking out over farmland, like in the Masterton area, which is a really beautiful area. And I said to him, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What are you doing up?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing." He goes, "You're getting up to open your presents now." And I said, "Will you let me?" And he goes, "Yeah, go on then." So I ran and I said to the kids, "Cuddles up. Cuddles, see we can open the presents, blah, blah, blah." So I went round everyone's bedrooms, "Merry Christmas, come on, let's open the presents." So everyone opened all their presents and everything. And then I didn't say anything. And it was like a couple of hours later, it was my niece, Tui. She goes, "Hey, there's still another present under the tree." And then she pulled it out because I hid it right at the back of the tree. And it was a big stocking. It was a huge, big Santa sack that I'd spent all year buying stuff to put in for my dad. And she read the thing. She goes, "Koro, it says it's for you." And he goes, "Hey?" And he came out and he was like, "What?" And he sat down and he goes, "Oh my God." And then he just started pulling all the stuff out and he got all emotional. And my mum later on said that when he got that letter from Santa, he read the letter and he started crying. She said the only time she'd ever seen my dad cry was when he lost his mum. But when he got that letter from Santa, he started crying. She said it was his most treasured thing. She said he read it like 1,000 times. I remember one of the things that I said, I don't know who's going to have that letter now, but I remember one of the things I said was, it was something like, "When your time comes, I've got a special job for you." And then a few weeks later, he died. So it's like I had accidentally, intuitively fulfilled my father's wish of getting a present from Santa. Christmas was the one time my father used to go all out for us kids and his mokos, his mokopunas, his grandchildren, all out, because he was giving us the Christmases he never had. And it's like I had accidentally, intuitively fulfilled my father's childhood wish of giving him Christmas which is why Christmas is so important to me. If it wasn't for me, my kids would never have gotten Christmas because my ex didn't want to give them Christmas. He felt that they got enough during the year. They were spoilt enough. They don't need Christmas. But because of my dad, I keep Christmas alive. Chris took 4 Christmases from me, well 5, because I had a couple of Christmases before he tried to kill me where he didn't. I never got anything. I never got gifts in that because but I didn't care because for me it wasn't about the gifts, it was about watching my boys come down and open their presents from Santa. But looking back now, I realise it was because he was starting to put his plan into action to emotionally detach because he was getting ready to kill me, to make it look like an addiction. Do you see the dream, right? So this is what I was all figuring out after making my coffee because I had to put all the puzzle pieces together. And my dad made me the woman I am today, to be unafraid, because he said you must always do what's right. He was very much a defender of the underdog, and he taught that to me. He said you must always do what's right, not what's easiest. Even if nobody supports you, even if you're attacked, even if people turn their back on you, even if people try and take everything away from you, you must always stand and do what's right. He said, because one day you'll have to answer to God and you'll have to answer to your ancestors. And he said, you're a Callahan. So you represent your name proudly. And that's why I've stood up in public and defended Vladimir Putin, and I've defended King Charles. And that was the whole premise of A Brave Sue Nitrous. And it's the storyline for the Arabian Nitrous. But now I'm going to rename it to The Girl Who Saved 2 Kings. And how her father put her through ascension training. I always said that I'm a soldier for God, and I'm a soldier for God's imperial army. It was my dad that trained me, and he made that training bloody hard. But I'm defending kings with it because of a lower kingdom lying to cause a war between the two. Now, you can look at this one of two ways. Is the one kingdom Iran and the other Great Britain? Or is it Russia and Great Britain? But either way, I'm defending 2 kings. In the story, she's going to be Arabian because I want to be able to tell, the Arab side of the story. But in real life, I've been more of an oracle to Iran than a defender. In real life, it's Russia I've been standing up to defend. It's Russia that I've risked my life to defend, and he is one of the 3 kings bloodline, the Holy Trinity bloodline. So in the story, it's going to be an Arabian tale, kind of like a Crusades thing where she helps defend the 2 kings when she finds out that they're both being lied to by the lower kingdom. But in the story, it's going to be an Arabian crusades kind of thing. But in real life, it was me standing up trying to appeal to King Charles to say Russia's not the bad guy. And me scaling walls to defend that bugger. Oh, has all the protection, all the money in the world, and here I am risking life and limb to defend his honour. And that's kind of what the story was about. Except when I wrote it as the Brave Sioux Nitress, it wasn't an Arabian thing. I just turned it into an Arabian thing because I thought it would be a great way to represent my Persian bloodline. My grandmother was born in Syria. She'd always told us she was born in Lebanon. So I have ties to where this war currently is. So that's why. And Yemen and all of that. So that's, and Jordan. That's why I turned it into the Arabian Nitress. Because I wanted to represent that side of my family. And I am defending them, but I'm more an oracle for them currently, for Iran. I'm more, this is what God and Allah are saying, this is what's going to happen, blah, blah, blah. So I've been more of an oracle for them, which brings into it my Egyptian side, because, you know, even though they were royals, they, the matriarchal side, were also their own high priestesses and that, because they had these gifts. And when Saudi Arabia gave us an ultimatum, face execution or flee, they decided, King Abdul al-Rashid, my grandfather, decided the best thing to do would be to leave. And then the Saudis took over and ruined everything. And because we were bringing diplomacy, you see, we were building schools and hospitals and that, and they couldn't have that. It was anti-Islamic to be diplomatic and kind and nice to people. So we got pinned with the murder of the son or the nephew or something, even though it wasn't us. And so, you know, instead of starting like a fatwa or anything like that, they put a jihad out on us and said, you know, like, we will kill you or you can flee, which was odd. It's always, I said to my dad, that's how you know we didn't do it. Because they don't give you no, like, run away or die. Because they just would out and out kill you, but they didn't. And that's how I knew. I said to Dad, see the Sherlock Holmes part of the dream, I said to Dad, that's how you know we didn't do it, because they would have just out and out killed us, but they didn't. We had Haroon's side, like, they were all executed, they were all assassinated and stuff like that, but with my granddad, however many times removed, I'm just going to say granddad, they let him and his family flee Egypt, and they became Bedouins, and they scattered to the four corners, according to my dad. And my grandmother's side, Sitdi's side, when they became Bedouins, which is why she was born in Syria, but she told us Lebanon because we didn't know at the time there was a jihad out on our family. She was trying to protect us. We've been forbidden. There's this family rule that we are never ever to visit Persia or the Middle East. And we could never figure out why until I did the investigating and found out about, you know, the jihad and all that. So, but my great grandmother and her sisters and that, so these were the wives of a pharaoh and her sisters, when they were Bedouins, they used to do readings for the rich and famous, for the royals and that, and they'd travel all around Persia and the Middle East doing readings, and she made a ton of money. And then some of them went off to New York on the Titanic, survived, thank God, and the rest ended up in like New Zealand and all of that. So that's why I'm doing right by Iran. However, I'm putting the puzzle pieces together, and I think even though the story is about, this Arabian princess who becomes a knight, who gets knighted, in real life, it's me defending Russia, the girl who saved two kings, the Holy Trinity bloodline, the King Charles and Vladimir Putin, because he is from royal bloodline. All three of us are from royal bloodline. Vladimir Putin is related to King Charles through Tsar Nicholas. Sorry. Vladimir Putin is related to King Charles through Prince Philip, the father. I'm related to King Charles through Robert the Bruce. So royal, we're all three of us are like royal bloodlines, but in God's eyes we're the Holy Trinity, and we're the three that see the lower kingdom has tried to tear the three of us apart, tried to keep us apart, tried to keep the Holy Trinity apart, because when the Holy Trinity come together, peace reigns throughout Europe, throughout the world. And that was the whole premise of With a Little Help from My Friends and Lucian's Dragon. After Lucian's Dragon, With a Little Help from My Friends creates the Amber Rose. And it's basically about how Queen Aithusa is protecting the Kingdom of Realms from Jeb the Goblin King in the Shadowlands. And in that, when Jeb the Goblin King dies, the Shadowlands retreat because they know they're not strong enough to fight the kingdoms. But Queen Aithusa and the Earth Kingdom, which is the kingdom she grew up in, where her parents are the king and queen, is the first line of defence. In order to get to the other kingdoms, the Shadowlands, the lower kingdom, has to get through the Earth Kingdom first. So all these stories have interwoven to tell the story about how I have been using all my gifts, the ability to talk to animals, talk to nature, understand the seasons and the cosmos and all of that, in order to weave magic, to tell a story, to appeal to two kings, to say, stand together and we can stop the war. And the bad guys will retreat in shame where they go to judgment. Because I wrote it, and because remember in Becoming Spellbound, after Baron Friedrich von Krumpel and Kierkegaard get caught, it goes to trial. And now they're under investigation from the ICC. And in the movie, it goes to court, and they get found guilty for treason and stuff. So I'm saying to the king, I think, I know you're afraid of shutting it down. I know you're scared of what's going to happen if you dissolve Parliament, but I know you know this is where this is headed. It's the only way to deal with this, because he's making it worse and worse and worse. He's working on behalf of Trump, and you know it, and he's making it worse and worse and worse. And I know you're afraid that if you shut it all down, it's going to come back on you, but I promise you, this is going to be like a smooth transition where people are just going to wake up like, all I can hear is dee 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 dee, like spring. They're going to wake up and it'll be like hell has finally left the building. the transition from the old to the new is going to go so smoothly, people aren't even going to notice the transition. That's what the whole dream was about. I publicly stating here and now, I have no drugs or alcohol in my system. If you do a blood test, the only thing you're going to find is mushroom vitamins, zinc, and oregano oil and black seed, because I've changed my oregano oil to one that has black seed in it. That's it. That's all you'll find. But that dream got me to use my brains to figure it all out, to put the puzzle pieces together in order to tell this story about the one who's been stealing and getting into people's higher perspective in order to infiltrate where they don't belong. And by doing that, and by using my investigative skills and everything that I have already investigated and presented to, because the man had the file and he was presenting it, presenting this case as the Sherlock Holmes, tour of London guy. The work's already been done. The evidence is already there. You just have to take it and do the right thing by it, and everybody's going to be so happy. You have to take the leap of faith. The toxicity will be bagged up. The evidence will be bagged up. It's all there. I've done all the work. I've done all the work for you. You just have to be brave enough to do the right thing, and the consequences of which are going to be peace. This is not going, people aren't going to riot, people aren't going to be upset, people will celebrate you because you're cutting the cancer out, removing the toxicity, which was the bag of medicine. And then it's like there's just going to be peace and quiet, and it's like time's going to reverse and everything's going to go back to how it was pre-election. Go back to better than it ever was. What you're going to do benefits Britain, and it'll bring peace, and the war will stop. And then maybe he'll let me build a school in Russia as well as Switzerland. Go to Switzerland, and then hopefully, if I'm a good girl, he'll say, yeah, come on then. And then we can make that Mary Seacole biopic. What I'm saying is, Your Majesty, there is a whole new world waiting for you on the other side of the door. You just need to open it, pop it. Don't fear what's on the other side, because it's heaven on earth. And that's what that dream was all about. Put the puzzle pieces together, figure it out, tell the story. Know the truth of the story, tell the story. And Debbie, tell the story. My dad might not have been a constant in my life because he was away serving the Queen and his country, but the influence that he had on my life made me the woman I am today. I am my daddy's little girl. I am exactly who my daddy created me to be. And I hope I've made him proud. And I've got his medals and his army stuff. I've got his dog tags. I'm very proud of them. And I'm just waiting for the day when I can give them to my sons, because I know that my sons are very proud. Even though they might not care about me anymore, I know that when it comes to their koro's military service, they're very proud of who my father was. And so I'm waiting for the day when I can hand them his medals and his dog tags and all of that. And I hope one day the blindfold is lifted from them so that they can see the truth of what their mother has actually gone through, what their mother has actually sacrificed to defend their king and Great Britain, and to do right by nations like Russia, who both have been used as pawns in a very dangerous game by a very sick and twisted individual, whose minions have been helping him try and take over the world to have a position he doesn't deserve and isn't his birthright, and certainly isn't ordained by God. And that's the story of the brave Sue Nitrous, aka the Arabian Nitrous, now the girl who saved two kings. Pretty cool, eh? I'm trying to... I know I said I wanted it done in the style of Aladdin, but I think that kind of graphic style would be too crass now. I want it to be something more artistic. So we'll just see. I don't think doing it in the style of Aladdin, with the research I've been doing on of buildings in Iran and how just artistically magnificent they are, doing it in the style of Aladdin wouldn't do those buildings justice. So it needs to be something more artistically finer detailed, because I want those stained glasses and, you know, those mosaics and that to just like bam when it comes on the screen. So that's the storyline. I'll use my script writers and that to help pad the rest out. But that's it. I had that dream. It's created this story. It's encouraged me to put this story out. I just hope my boys see the truth and what it is I've actually done to defend a nation that turned against me because my dad taught me to do the right thing. And no matter what anyone says, no matter what anyone does, do the right thing. So that's what I've been doing. And now I'm going to turn it into that. What a beautiful picture book it would be. Storybook as well. For Muslim children, for Christian children, for the British, for Middle Eastern Persian kids and that, to bring that kind of book out. Because I'm between worlds. I'm Persian and I'm British. I'm Scottish and Irish. I'm French and German. I'm Spanish. I'm Viking. But I'm also Egyptian, Syrian, Iranian, Yemenian, Jordanian, Jewish, Indigenous. I'm a mongrel. But it's why I'm so healthy. Mongrels are always the healthiest. But I'm royal mongrel. Let's get that right. I might be a mongrel, but I'm royal mongrel. Royal through my veins. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go now. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. If the king or anyone representing the king is listening, I had to walk away because sometimes you have to stand in the fire to realise it's burning you. Because you weren't seeing it before, but I have a feeling if I'm having this dream, you're seeing it now. And I love you, King Charles, with all my heart. and I will always defend you. You piss me off, but I outrank you in the eyes of God, so I'm kind of allowed to tell you off a little. Typical Scorpio rat, too trusting of the wrong people. But I think you see it all now, don't you, Poppet? And if Vladimir Putin is listening, you piss me off the most because you're smarter than that. But you too had to learn fire hot, touch, burn, ouch, blister, right? So now that we've got that sorted and I've kicked your ass, it's the king's bottom. I love you too. Fake bestie, fake work husband, pretend work husband. And something tells me that all this is about to come to an end and all the toxicity is going to get bagged up and removed so that we clean up the world and we can do good by it. Whatever it is the king is about to do is going to benefit Britain, which will in turn help Russia and save Europe and America and Persia, because Trump and Starmer are going to get removed and they're the problem. When you cut the cancer out, healthy cells grow. So, and I was taking the bag of medication. So, yeah, so that's what that dream meant. So, quite the dream, really, eh? That's why I'm the dream weaving alchemist. I create magic out of what comes from my dreams. Because I produce DMT naturally, a high amount of DMT naturally anyway. So when on the occasion when I do smoke weed, it's like stratospheric. But I can promise you now, you can test my blood. You won't find anything in my house. You won't find anything in my system. I can't afford it. It's illegal. I don't have access to it. I take oregano oil. It helps with the inflammation and that in my gut from being force medicated for being Indigenous. But it led us here. And now I get to tell this story. And it's a story that will inspire children in the Middle East and Persia and Great Britain and Europe and that, of how one girl was brave enough to scale an impenetrable wall in order to do right by the kingdoms who were being used as pawns to fight each other, so that a lower kingdom, with the help of his minions, could take over the world. And she's what's standing between the two, with my evidence, which speaks for itself. It's all there. So I'm going to go, and I'll speak to you later. Have a beautiful day. Ka kite anō.